Good morning, everyone. It is November 20th. Going to talk about what's going on with the war in Ukraine. Starting off in the north with the Kharkiv direction in the Kupiansk sector, specifically Kupiansk being right here. This is a key bit of terrain. Russian forces have engaged in offensive operations near Kupiansk. Ukrainian forces did successfully repair several attacks in the last 48 hours. They managed to fend off four specific strong attacks near Sinkivka, which is right here. The Russians were pushing southward. I'm going to zoom in for you guys because there's a road network that you can kind of see here. So the first attack line was down towards Sinkivka this way. A second attack came down this road to Petropavlivka. And then a third came from Yahidne to try to take this road right here. Those were the major attacks that took place in the last 48 hours over the weekend, really. Reports indicate that the Russians are also continuing to work to push forces out in front of the river system near Kupiansk. Now, this is kind of a critical situation because Russia does have a drone advantage in this region, and it's contributing to increased Ukrainian losses. The Russian strategy on Kupiansk is targeting logistics routes. And the reason that they've shifted their tactics here, and I'll show you, is when you look at Kupiansk, there's a river that runs through here. You can kind of see it as I highlight it here. Kupiansk proper is actually high ground compared relative to the route that Russia would be taking into this region. And because of that, Russia is at a disadvantage. However, Russia has smartly destroyed many of the river crossings in this region. And what this is now forcing the Ukrainians to do is move their logistics operations really far south to Barovo, which is way down here. So you kind of can see movements to get logistics to the front line have somewhat stopped out of Kupiansk and now are having to cross at Barovo, which is right here. That's a pretty significant distance for them to have to traverse relative to the battlefield. Now, the other problem that they're seeing in Kupiansk is that with the destruction of the river crossings, you essentially start to cut off the other side of this whole Kupiansk district. So with this bridge here destroyed and other bridges, this whole sector here becomes vulnerable. It's a strategic vulnerability for Ukraine. That being said, the defenses that surround this region right here are really, really strong, really robust, really powerful for Ukraine. And these defenses have not yet fallen despite the somewhat disadvantaged position they're being put in logistically. And there's not really an anticipation that anytime soon these defenses will fall because there's other things in play, such as the environment, the weather, etc. Now, moving southward towards Avdiivka, this is another major region where a lot of action is taking place, and the Russians are currently conducting attacks along three axes. They have the main axis, which is pushing direct center towards Avdiivka proper, which is right here. They have a secondary axis up in the northern portion that's pushing this way, and a tertiary or third axis that is pushing to the south. They're trying to conduct a double envelopment to cut off Avdiivka and close it off to the Ukrainians. So previously, the tactics that the Russians were using in this region that got them some of these gains were heavy tank tactics in the north and south. The Russians have had to stop using tanks in the north because there's logistics challenges up here apparently for the Russians in getting a number of equipment and repairs there. This is also a more open region. The geography down here is a little bit better suited for tank operations than up here because there's a series of reservoirs up here that make it wide open, kind of funnels armor into specific locations that are pre-targeted and can be destroyed by drones and artillery. This leads to problems with the Russians in the north. However, in the south, the Russians do have the ability to continue to push heavy armor from the Donetsk facility or Donetsk axis, and there's actually Donetsk tank repair facilities that are being operated by the Russians in real time in this area right here. So if there is a damage, they can recover quickly back and then reset it back into the battlefield. However, Ukraine is using minefields very effectively in this region to impede all of these Russian advancements. The Ukrainians have shifted their tactics. They recognize that Russian demining efforts were causing Russia to have gained significant amounts of territory because they were able to demine, rapidly attack, and move on. However, captured Russian soldiers have indicated that Ukraine has largely, in the last few weeks, destroyed much of Russia's demining equipment, and in the absence of these actual demining tools, they're improvising with putting random sweepers and trying to build kind of janky systems, and they're proving ineffective and even dangerous. In response to the destruction of these demining efforts, Russia is using kamikaze vehicles, meaning they're loading them up with explosives, trying to breach Ukrainian positions or clear minefields by just driving them through and then blowing them up. This has been largely ineffective. And since the initial big pushes that took the mound here up to the north and took the towns, you can't see it here because I've written over it too much, but the town of Vodyane down here, there really hasn't been much more movement on the Russian front here. And then finally, we'll zoom out here and move to the other sector where there's been a significant portion of action, and that's crossing the Dnipro River in Kherson. The Ukrainians have established a bridgehead, which is significant. The Ukrainian Marine Corps did establish several bridgeheads in multiple areas. Krinsky near Pishkanivka down here, as well as one that is over here just across from Kherson city proper. They have driven Russian forces back in all of these areas, and the Russian forces have reduced intensity of artillery attacks on this bank because of the lack of precision munitions and the ability to strike what the dug-in Ukrainians. These operations have successfully gotten more heavy equipment across too, so that the Ukrainians are establishing a strong effort here. There is heavy resistance from Russian ground fighters, though. Russians have established pretty robust lines of defense, although they are deeper from the river itself. Generally, they're sitting along this road line here. So any kind of breakthrough here is going to be extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, as of right now in the current makeup of what Ukraine is showing. And this is where some of the Ukrainian leaders, Ukrainian soldiers are starting to question the significance of these bridgeheads. Now, they do create crucial strategic relief. They are, if they can maintain and grow, they can become problematic, as there could be a push into towards Crimea from here. However, despite these successes, there are questions as to whether this is strategically sound, because for any kind of major push to happen, Ukraine still has to land thousands of pieces of equipment, tens of thousands of soldiers on this bank, and they just aren't there yet. So with no immediate signs of a strategic breakthrough, there's worry that are they just putting soldiers on the banks of the Dnipro just to receive fire and continue to be attrited by Russian forces that are pushing to drive them off this side of the river, especially with river logistics being a little bit more difficult here. However, in the meantime, Ukraine has seen pretty significant success here in taking this bank of the banks of the river here and denying any kind of Russian ability to use riverboats throughout to conduct missile strikes and other types of incursions across for themselves. And that's it for today. Have a good day, everyone.